So now we're actually going to hear from a couple named Matt and Patty Shonoff in the Czech Republic in Prague. Uh, Chase and Logan interviewed them, and you're about to hear an absolutely incredible story of faith from these two. And I don't want to take away from the interview because listening to it, it got me pumped up for missions. So we're just going to go ahead and throw it to them and get ready for a ride here.
Hey everyone, welcome to our interview. My name is Chase Durham, and I'm joined by Logan Andrew and our special guests, Matt and Patty Shawnoff from Teach Beyond in Prague. If you didn't know, Prague is located in the Czech Republic, and the Czech Republic is by Germany, Poland, Austria, over on that side of the world. And so, Matt and Patty, thank you guys so much for joining us. As I was preparing to meet I was reading your kind of ministry bio, and it just really struck me that you guys are getting to do some awesome and unique ministry, getting to go over there with an organization like Teach Beyond, where you're using teaching English as a mission field. And so, why don't we start this interview by you guys just sharing a little bit about yourselves and also just your call to go to Prague?
Yeah, hi. I'm Matt Shawnoff. This is my wife, Patty. Dobry den, as we say in the Czech Republic. Before we went to the Czech Republic, I was just a business person. We've been in the McKinney area since like 98. Raised our family in the McKinney area, had been at Cottonwood for a number of years, and I owned a business. I worked actually in my offices in downtown McKinney, and we were just kind of doing life.
I was the middle school English teacher at Evans Middle School in the McKinney ISD. We were raising our family. We have 3 children, and 2 girls and a boy.
As for our call to Prague, it's missions was never on our mind to actually go and serve overseas. It was not something we ever considered going all the way back to our marriage, raising our children. It was kind of a confluence of events that took place over a number of years, starting in 2011 with my father passing away. And within a year, a good friend of mine passed away. My father died of cancer after a very long struggle for a number of years. And my good friend actually was killed in a car accident. So that happened within a very short time frame. There was a lot of difficult times during that, as you can imagine, just wrapping our head around mortality and that type of thing and drawing closer to God during that. But also during that time, I was diagnosed with cancer. And then kind of to top it off with everything going on while I was going through cancer, getting treatment for cancer, my business was also involved in some things. And I was looking at losing my business and losing my home and losing all our assets and this type of thing. So it was a very, very difficult time for us for about 2 or 3 years. That really kind of shifted our focus just on mortality and what we were doing with our lives. And we loved the Lord and we raised our kids that way and we were going to church, but we kind of felt during that time of what are we doing? Should we be doing something more? And God really worked on our hearts over a period of a few years. And we just felt so strongly he was telling us to go. Now, God in his wisdom didn't tell us where. He didn't tell us when or how or anything else. He just said go. So we really, over a couple of years, tried to press into that and step out in faith. And we took some faith steps. We decided to sell our home in preparation of going. Again, we didn't know where. So we sold our home and moved to an apartment. We decided to sell my business and get out of that. We did that. We sold about 90% of our possessions during that time. When it came to the end of our lease in an apartment, something we hadn't done and lived in 25 years, we still didn't know. So we let our lease go and sold the rest of our belongings and packed up a couple suitcases and hit the road and more or less kind of lived out of our car for a few months as we spent time reading the Bible and praying and traveling the western side of the country, just really seeking God as to, okay, where do we go and what do we do?
What now?
And I'll let Patty pick it up because within just a couple weeks of getting back to the Dallas area from that time, God really showed up and told us what we should be doing.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, we had traveled to Prague on a trip for just a couple of days. And while we were there, I had this feeling like I could live here. And I didn't know at the time what that really meant, but I just felt like I could live here. So when we got back, I just kind of started looking up some things online, and I'm like, I sent Matt an email, which he says he doesn't remember, but I had sent him this school. It was an international school in Prague. 2 years later, in the process of trying to figure out what God had for us, Matt found the school in Prague again, and he sends it to me, and he's like, hey, I think you should apply. I mean, you're a teacher. They're looking for middle school teachers. And I'm thinking, yes, of course I'm going to apply. This is the school I sent you like 2 years ago. And this was right when we were trying to figure out what God had for us, and we were kind of looking at different opportunities. And so we applied to the school, and they immediately got back to us and were very interested in having us come over and serve at the school.
Wow, man, what a story. I love that. I'm so encouraged by that. And I think just something that I kept hearing in what you guys are saying was that the Lord was bringing you to this place of dependence, right? You were fully dependent on him. And so often that's when we can hear the Lord's voice the clearest, it seems. And I'm just encouraged by you guys' faithfulness. And I guess my question is, in all of that, trying to discern the Lord's voice. What were maybe some of the fears that you experienced in that, and just the fears about starting a completely new life somewhere completely new, like Prague?
Yeah, for us, it was, I would say maybe more frustration than fear, because the process from when things started happening in our life until we went to Prague was 6 years. So it wasn't an overnight, very quick type thing. And during that time, there were periods that I would come home from work and say to Patty, God tell you where we're going? And she's like, no, didn't tell you. Like, no, not today. But we felt so strongly that we were supposed to go that I think our biggest frustration was waiting, really waiting. We got to the point where we had looked into some short-term mission trips, just to find out what was out there and the types of things that maybe we could do that fit our passions and our skill set and that type of thing. But yeah, it was a lot of waiting. And I encourage young people now that look to go to the ministry or think about going to the ministry, is when I look back on that time, had we just gone to do something when we decided we were ready, it would not nearly have been as blessed as it turned out to be, because we weren't ready. There were still other things God had going on. Some were specific to us that he was working on. Some were just external with family and those types of things. But really, and Patty shared the story about the school in Prague, and when God then had everything aligned and he had us ready, we went from having no idea of where to go to being in Prague within 90 days. And that just doesn't happen typically going to the field, that it's that quick. But again, it was on the backside of about 6 years of preparation.
Yeah. Waiting is just, it's a hard thing in our culture because everything is instant. Like, we have Netflix now, so we get to watch what we want, when we want to. We have iPhones, and it's just crazy how instant our culture is. And it's really kind of hindered our ability to wait on the Lord. And we see all throughout Scripture just that we should be waiting on the Lord, because it cultivates and fosters a dependence upon God. And so that is really cool testimony that you guys just shared with that. So as you guys are now transitioned into Prague, what's the spiritual climate like? Like, is the gospel a predominant belief, or what's going on over there spiritually?
For us, it was really a surprise. We didn't know going into it that the Czech Republic is the most atheistic country in Europe. And we had been to other countries, and they have a history of religion, even though, the religion is not, people aren't always practicing the religion. They have a history of religion. But in the Czech Republic, they had 500 years of religious persecution, that religion was not part of their culture at all. In fact, like less than 30% of Czechs actually believe in God. More of them believe in witchcraft and witches and magic than they believe in a God, any God. So it was really surprising for us. And I also learned that the school that I teach at is an international school, and there's quite a many of them. But it is the only Christian international school in Prague, and the school is the city is like 1.3 million people, and only have one Christian international school. Yeah, it's surprising.
Right. So obviously there's a big spiritual hurdle there. Y'all face in your move to Prague. There's obviously going to be a language barrier, these cultural hurdles. So can you maybe just tell us about that?
Yeah, there was actually, the language is a problem. They speak Czech. Now they speak Czech. They used to be taught Russian in school because it was a former communist country. They have transitioned to teaching English in school for the young students, but that transition took 15 years or more, maybe, before that was transitioned into school. So they don't have a very long very long history of students learning English in school. Speaking Czech is something that we're learning. However, Patty works in a predominantly English atmosphere the whole time. And mine, when I work, it's both English and Czech. However, the students and the young people, young adults, they see the ability to speak English as really a way up and a way out. And it is in their country. It's very well known that if you, being a Czech person, can learn English fluently, you can get paid up to double for doing the same job somebody else in the country does. So it's a very big economic benefit. That being said, really there's almost a hard split between those that are like maybe 35 to 40 and older versus younger. Those 35 to older were taught Russian. The other ones had a lot of exposure to English. And so the adults, most of them don't speak English. Even the young adults, most of them don't speak English well. And that's even down into high school. I work with high school students, and their English is not fluent that you would think it would be fluent if they had been taking it at school for 8 or 10 years.
So English is kind of viewed as an opportunity to get up, to go out, to go somewhere else. And so that's really the need that y'all's ministry is meeting, this Teach Beyond ministry, and you guys are there, and Patty, you're teaching English. So how did you guys even discover Teach Beyond? What was your introduction to that? Why did you decide, out of all the missions organizations in the world, why did you choose Teach Beyond to be your partner?
Okay, that's a funny story because it's very simple. We found the school first, which doesn't usually happen. And we contacted the school and filled out applications, and they asked us, oh, okay, well, so what sending organization are you with? And we're like, what's a sending organization? We don't know. And we're new at this. So they sent us a list of ones that they work with. And so we sent out emails to those and tried to contact them. And Teach Beyond was actually the first one to get back to us. And they had a very specific program. They provided training stateside before you went. They just had everything set up very easily for us. And so we contacted them. We did some Skype interviews with them, and it was a really easy choice for us because they were so supportive of what we were doing.
Wow. Yeah, that's just evidence of the Lord's hand, right? Just piecing the things together. And I know, Patty, you mentioned that prior to moving to Prague, you were actually a teacher here in McKinney at middle school. And so I guess I just wonder, how is it different from teaching here to teaching in Prague? What are some of the differences and maybe even some of the similarities?
Okay, well, kids are the same all over the world, you know. And I teach middle school kids. So these are kids that are like 11 to 14 to 15. And yeah, people always say, oh my gosh, how can you teach middle schoolers? But I love them. They're my people. And the difference between teaching in a public school in America and then teaching in an international school, for me, there's two big things. One is the class size. In McKinney, I could have up to 36 students in one class, and that's really difficult to really get to know your students. And you know, teachers want to be able to build into the lives of these kids, not just educate them, but just to be a role model or a mentor to them. And when you don't get to know all of them very well, you know, you're lacking part of that relationship. And then the second thing that I think is really important is I teach at a Christian school, and I'd never taught in a Christian school before. In McKinney, I wasn't allowed to bring up my faith or talk about Jesus or salvation unless a student asked a question, and then I could talk about it. But in this school, it's a Christian school, so it's part of our curriculum. Not only do they take Bible class, but we are highly encouraged in every subject area to show how God is part of our lives everywhere. So, you know, biblical integration into education is a huge part of what we do at our school.
That's really cool. And so getting to work with all these kids, do y'all have any like cool student testimonies that you could share just about how the Lord has changed people's lives?
Yeah, definitely. I work predominantly with the high school students, where she works with the middle school. And in the high school students, I have met students not only in the classroom, but I do a lot of tutoring, either one-on-one or small group. And I've met students through English camps, English weekends, these other types of events where high school students will come to work on their English, but they're put on by local churches and other missionaries. And in those things, as I've met some teenagers, I realized that especially with this older group, Patty says middle schoolers are the same everywhere. High schoolers, I think, it's been a while since I've had high schoolers, but the ones that are in the Czech Republic specifically that I interact with, the country is so dark spiritually that the amount of things that they go through and endure, I think, surpass what most students in America that I know, at least in the McKinney area, that have to deal with. I would say that of all the students I talk to, especially the young ladies, there's abuse that's very rampant. There's lack of fathers, lack of direction. Drugs are very rampant, alcohol. It's just really a bad situation for a lot of these students. And I have seen, working with them over a couple years, that what they want is to be noticed and to be loved and to be cared for and to be cared about. And I've seen just changes in these people. There was at an English camp, there's one young man named Yarda. He was 18. He was an avowed atheist, did not believe in God, was not going to believe in God. And we spent many, many days, over a week, many, many hours, just talking about life, not trying to push anything, just talking about life, what he believed, why he believed it, what he was going to do. By the end of the camp, Patty and I were walking in for our last meal at the camp, and we found him in a foyer area where a table was set up, and he had a manga Bible, which I did not know existed, but a manga Bible, and he was sitting under a table by himself in a corner reading it. A young man that said, I will never read the Bible. I don't believe in God. And here he's reading that after these types of interactions over the time. So that was fantastic. I've been able to keep in touch with him. I don't see him very often because he lives outside the city, but we got a young lady named Maya. She, I mentioned the abuse, et cetera. She's been through some really, really horrible things. She sent me a message not long ago. I showed it to Patty that says, I just want to let you know you saved my life. And to me, it was heartbreaking and very encouraging at the same time, because she's 16 years old and she's had such a difficult life, but now she has hope that, look, there's something bigger than her. There's someone bigger than her, and she doesn't have to sit in where she is, and she can know the hope of salvation in Jesus Christ, that there are people, there is a God that loves her, that cares about her, and wants the best for her. So yeah, we're really starting to see some of these teenagers really kind of making some shifts in their life as they are getting exposed more and more to the gospel, And then also discipling for people that, like Patty and I, and there's some other missionaries there that are Christians and have been and are adults and can really walk through them with some of these difficult things they're going through.
Wow, man, just it's crazy how you guys are in Prague and we're here in Allen McKinney, and circumstances are different, but the problem is the same, right? That sin has broken everything, that we are all desperate for hope, for a savior. And so it's just so sweet to hear the gospel transforming lives through your testimony and your discipleship and your faithfulness to serve. Um, and I know that you two have, you serve full time in Prague, but you have 3 kids of your own who live here in the States. And so I just want to ask, has that been challenging? Do they think that you guys are crazy? What was that conversation like, and how do you maintain relationship with them now?
Okay, well, our 3 kids, their ages 23, 25, and 27. So we always say, well, even if we were in America, we would hardly see them because they're living their lives. But when we talked to them about what we were going to do, they were very supportive. I mean, they know us, they know our passion, and they were excited for us to go and serve in this capacity full time. Our parents were the same way. Our friends, on the other hand, thought we were crazy. Once we sold our home, they would say, okay, well, what are you going to do now? And we'd say, we don't know yet. We're waiting. And they're like, okay. So they didn't really understand. But once we had gone and come back and told them about what we were doing, some of them were like really excited and encouraged. And I feel like, we kind of opened their eyes to what more they could be doing in their lives. They're in the same life stages that we are, where their kids are grown. So, what else could you be doing to further the kingdom where you are? For us, it took us halfway across the world, but, we were willing to go and do that. And so, yeah, some people don't understand it, but the ones that know us well, they understand why we're there and why we're doing what we do.
Yeah, and that it's funny because like it did seem crazy. Like I'm sure at times you guys probably even thought, "Are we crazy?" Like,
Yeah.
and because waiting is just not something that we're used to in the American culture. And did you guys say it was 6 years before it all transpired? So at any point, did you guys look at each other and say, did we hear the Lord wrong, or did we make a mistake, or
Oh,
what?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's times we go, what are we doing?
Yes.
Just what are we doing? And are
Did we miss it?
Yeah, did we miss something along the way? Or, are we, should we have, taken this step right now? There was a lot of doubt about mainly the timing, and then, again, the frustration of just not knowing. Typically, Americans, it's like, okay, so here's your plan, and then you're going to do this first to do this, because you have an end goal in mind.
Yeah.
We had no idea what that end goal was going to be. So each step along the way, we just had to say, okay, Lord, we're trusting that you have a plan here, and eventually we're going to know what that is.
Right. I love how, it just reminds me of in scripture, how it talks about how we're to look so different from the rest of the world, unrecognizable, right? Like Paul uses the language of aliens. And it sounds, we read it in scripture and like, it sounds like, yeah, like I want to do that. And then we come face to face with those opportunities and we begin to fear and we begin to doubt. But Matt, you earlier used the language of you continue to take these faith steps. And I love that language because we tell our students all the time, like faith is choosing to believe regardless of how you feel, regardless of your circumstances, regardless of culture. And so I'm encouraged by how you guys just continue to press in and take those faith steps, choosing to believe that God would be faithful.
Yeah. So speaking of that, because I feel like you guys were just obedient, and I realize you guys would be the first to say, like, look, don't, like, we were just trying to do our best. I understand that. But really, like, thinking about our students who are seeking the Lord, some of them are going off to college. They're trying to figure out, I mean, who to date, right? Like they have all these big life questions that they're trying to answer, and they're praying and they're seeking the Lord and they're waiting, and they might not be getting answers as quickly as they thought they would be. What kind of advice would you give to our students and just our church family about like how to pray and seek the Lord and just wait on Him?
Yeah. Uh, for me, and I will say that during this process, God was extremely faithful in that when he first called, and he first called me. I talked to Patty after that, but when he first called me, it was so overwhelming. It literally was one of those situations where my entire perspective almost changed overnight. It did, changed overnight, 180 degrees, where I am not supposed to be doing this anymore. And in all the uncertainty and all the frustration that followed for several years after that, that feeling, that feeling of the Spirit pressing on me did not leave. That I had no idea what it was, but we were supposed to do something else. For the students, though, and I think back to when I was a young man and in college, I always had a feeling, and I think probably a lot of young men do, we kind of have a superhero complex and we want to be famous and important and save the world, and maybe young ladies as well, but I can definitely speak from a young man perspective. And when we were young, first married and started having a family, there were times I would tell Patty, okay, I just want to do something bigger. I just feel like there's so much that I can do for the world, for other people, and serving for God, that I just want it so badly. And that persisted for a long time. And then we kind of got into the lull of just family, and just living life. But God had a plan during that time. What I told myself and what I tell myself even now is two things I remind myself of during these times: that God is sovereign in everything, always. And I tell myself this multiple times a day: God is sovereign. So his plan is going to work out best. I can get in there and mix it up and mess it up, but his plan is going to work out best. He's sovereign. And he's holy. God is holy. Always has been, always will be. He wants the best for me, and he can see everything. I cannot. And so I remind myself almost daily about those two particular factors, those characteristics of God. And that is what I have prayed for decades. And sometimes, young people, it will take decades, and sometimes it won't. But it's not up to us.
Yeah. That's just so great to hear. I mean, even for myself, there are so many times we seek the Lord, we want something now. And like sometimes it's going to take decades. And that's just a great reminder. Well, Matt and Patty, like I'm so encouraged by you guys. I'm so grateful for just our friendship. Like we literally just met over Zoom. And I'm thankful for the words that you just got to share with our students and our church body. And so if anyone from our church is compelled to reach out to you guys to become prayer partners, to help financially support you guys, or even just connect and talk further, how can they reach you, or what websites can they visit, or what can they do?
Well, through our Teach Beyond, you can go to the teachbeyond.org web page, and there's a section that says Give. And if you put in you're going to support a member, because we're members, then you would just start typing in our last name, SCHON, and we'll pop up. So that's a way to give. Otherwise, we do have our own Facebook page. And so if you want to connect with us, you can search for us on Facebook, and then we can invite you to join. We call it Matt and Patty in Prague. It's just, and we do updates of different things that we're doing while we're there throughout the year. So that's the best way to connect with us, especially when we're in Prague, because you can message us through Facebook or something like that. That's an online thing as opposed to text messages that we don't always, can't do when we're in Prague. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Matt and Patty, thank you guys so much just for your obedience to the Lord. It's encouraging. And I pray that our students and our church body are encouraged by you, and that we're going to be lifting you guys up in prayer and praying for you guys and the ministry that you're getting to do in Prague. And so, students, church family, thank you all so much for joining us. I hope that you enjoyed, and I hope that you were encouraged by the words that Matt and Patty shared with you guys. And don't let it just go in one ear and out the other. Take action. What is it that the Lord has been calling you to do that you've kind of been ignoring or just kind of pushing aside? And let us all just learn to wait on the Lord. Matt, Patty, thank you guys again. Logan, thanks for joining. Church family, we love you, and we will talk to you soon.
What an incredible story. I mean, just the fact that they were able to sell everything, didn't know where they were going. Then they end up in Prague, which is, like they said, one of the most atheistic countries in the world that has a great need for the gospel, that people don't believe in Jesus. It just shows that God put them in the right place. And, God will always put us in the right place when we are faithful. And so Matt and Patty had an incredible story. And it's one like we hear stories like this, but the thing is most missions are not like this, but we see that this is actually true, and these things actually happen where, you have to sell everything and you have to just go where God calls you.
It reminded me of the story of the rich young ruler.
Oh, yeah.
And how Jesus says, sell everything you have and give it to the poor. And the rich young ruler walked away sad because he didn't want to give up his possessions. But Matt and Patty, when Jesus tells them, sell everything you have, give it to the poor, and follow me, they did it.
Absolutely.
And that is absolutely incredible.
Absolutely. So, guys, we hope you enjoyed the first night of the virtual GoLocal Missions Conference. Join us tomorrow as we hear from people from India, from Chattanooga, Tennessee, our home, and also from Athens, Greece. Signing off, keep it Christ-like, Cottonwood. This is Jonathan Jennings.